Have you ever felt accused? Have you ever felt beaten down by life? Have you ever felt dejected or rejected, hurt, offended? Have you ever felt the sting of someone who was against you? Have you ever felt that you were in the right, but people still accused you of being in the wrong? Have you ever felt that you had to defend yourself and you didn't know why? Because Jesus did. Jesus did. In the gospel today, we again see Jesus being accused of something that he was not. People are often afraid of things that they can't understand. And I think that God coming into the world to love humanity without condition, to love the outcast and the dejected, to love the diseased and the oppressed, I think that people were shocked by that and afraid of that, enough to accuse Jesus of being insane and demon-possessed. It was easier to accuse Jesus of being a heretic, of being evil, than to believe that God was doing something new and powerful in the world. Now, I want to take a few moments today to think about what it meant for Jesus to be accused, and also to think about why he was being accused. He was being called Beelzebul, an odd name that meant Lord of Filth, and referred to Satan. Why? Why such hatred against Jesus? And Jesus, he didn't condemn any of these accusations, but he did throw at them a question of logic. And I think it's kind of interesting. If I am Satan, then how can I be against myself? And if I'm against myself, then I can't continue to stand. And if I'm not Satan, then why are you accusing me? Now, I'm going to pause there a moment and offer a more modern example of what it means to be accused and how difficult it can be to stand firm in your beliefs. The example I have, and I had a video clip, but I'm going to kind of unpack it verbally today for you all, is from the 1957 film 12 Angry Men with Henry Fonda. How many people have seen this film? A number of you have. If you haven't, I highly, highly recommend it. It's a fascinating film that examines the ways that human bias and prejudice can influence us, can affect our decision-making, can affect the way we think about people, the way we behave. And the plot is quite simple. A young foreign man, has been accused of killing his father. Now, he's been on trial to determine his fate. And it's up to 12 male jurors to determine if the young man is guilty or not guilty. And it's almost the whole film is shot in one room in real time while they deliberate this young man's fate. And if the young man is found guilty, the penalty is the death sentence. And so in this film, the 12 men have to deliberate and determine if this young man is guilty or if there is enough reasonable doubt to find him not guilty. Now, the crux of the film is that most of the jurors have inherent biases and prejudices. And so they begin by taking an initial vote. They have to determine the young man's fate, and their conviction, they have to be unanimous in what they decide for the young man. And so they take an initial vote, and 11 of the men immediately find the young man guilty. They've heard the evidence. They think that he did stab his father and that he can deserve to die. But one man, one juror number 8 in the film, Henry Fonda, he stands alone and casts a vote of not guilty. Now, he doesn't know the young man. He's heard the evidence. He's not even certain that the young man is innocent. But he values the young man's life enough to want to take the time to examine the evidence again, to talk through all the evidence and give this young man the dignity that a human life is deserving of. He wants to be certain that he can put down a confident vote of guilty or not guilty. The other men then scoff at this man. They're annoyed. Most of them want to come to a quick conviction and leave and get home very quickly. And it's apparent that this young man's life doesn't really matter to them, all except the one man. And he slowly begins to convince all of them, one by one, that they have a bias, that they have prejudice, that they haven't examined the evidence enough to give this young man a fair amount of time to think about his life and to value him as a human being. And so juror number 8 stands alone, and then he, like the young man, finds himself accused too. And so the deeper look at this film is that one man was willing to stand against 11 and say, you know what? This young man may be guilty, but he may not be. But he deserves, his life has value, and he deserves us to take the time to talk through the evidence and give him a fair consensus. And one by one, all the jurors come to the same conclusion that juror number 8 did, that there is enough doubt in the case to not convict the young man. And again, it's a fascinating look at how we all have biases. We all make quick judgments. And maybe we don't value life the way that we ought to. So what does this film, though, have to do with the gospel text that we heard today? Well, I think to get to that point, we have to ask why. Jesus in the gospel today had been accused of being evil, of being demon-possessed, of being out of his mind. Why was he being accused? Why was Jesus being accused by scribes and Pharisees? Why was he being called insane and Satan? What did he do to bring those accusations against him? He was healing people. If you go back to the beginning of Mark 3, you will find him healing a man in a temple, in the synagogue, a man with a withered hand. And then he went on and he cured diseases and he healed people, anyone willing to come to him knowing that they needed life and health. And anyone who came to Jesus for hope and for healing, he gave it to them. He cured diseases. He exorcised demons. He gave life and health to people who had it taken away. He had compassion on the people who had been cast out of their own communities, treated like a leper, treated like a disease, treated like a demon. And his goal was to take that stigma off of them and restore them to community, to give them life, to value life. And to many, these acts of healing scared people. They didn't know what to think of it all. Was he holy or was he evil? Jesus valued human life. He valued the dignity of everyone as a beloved child of God. And he would take the insults, and he would take the accusations, and he would even take on death, wouldn't he? His love and compassion had no end. its end would be to die rather than to condemn. Because he knew what his calling was in the world. He knew that the world needed the healing touch of God, the healing touch of love and mercy. And if he could stand behind his convictions, then maybe all the people that accused him and couldn't believe in him as the divine Son of God, maybe they too might believe. It's easy in the world that we live in to have a bias, to have judgments about people, to have prejudice. And in the movie 12 Angry Men, one man stood up for the dignity and the value of a human life, even a human life that he didn't know well at all. And he wanted to defend that dignity and that value, even if it made him stand alone on the outside being accused. To follow Jesus is to act like that, to believe that every life has dignity and God-given value. To follow Jesus is to defend that dignity and that value. Jesus is the one that stands between us and death. He is our advocate, our defender. Like juror number 8 in the film, Jesus stands up for the value of human life, for dignity, for the worth of all people. May we too follow in his footsteps, valuing life, valuing all people, leaving our biases behind, taking the time to listen and to have compassion, being hesitant to pass judgment, believing in the redemptive good of all people, and always seeking love and forgiveness. Amen.